Since the Final Fantasy franchise began, items have played a crucial role in shaping the gameplay experience. The right item in the right hands could completely shift the tide of battle, and over the years, we've seen this embodied by all kinds of items, with some offering small boosts in stats, while others possessed abilities that were incredibly powerful. Popular items like Elixirs, Phoenix Pinions, and Turbo Ethers have appeared in almost every entry, with their effects remaining fairly consistent. But sometimes an item has been introduced that exceeded all kinds of expectations, granting absurd levels of power and in some instances even breaking the game. In this video, we'll be taking a closer look at some of those items, focusing on consumables that became infamous for their overpowered abilities, both in regards to in-game application, but also the wider meta. And as usual, we'll only be looking at one item per entry. But if we're sticking to the theme of properties that exceeded all kinds of expectations, then it would be remiss not to mention Final Fantasy XIV. And on that note, we'd like to thank Square Enix for sponsoring this video. Over the last decade, Final Fantasy XIV has gone through an incredible resurgence, but the development team is nowhere near finished yet. After smashing all kinds of critical and commercial expectations, Naoki Yoshida and Creative Studio 3 are looking to do it again with Dawntrail, the game's 5th major expansion. Alongside a plethora of new challenging dungeons, trials and raids, and plenty of new allusions to the illustrious history of the franchise, this means the level cap has been increased to level 100. There's a major graphical overhaul that features enhanced textures and shadow resolutions, and 2 brand new jobs, one of which, the Pictomancer, we did a complete evolutionary study on. To make the experience even more accommodating for newcomers, the free trial has also been extended. This means you can now play the base game, as well as the first 2 expansions, Heaven's Ward and Stormblood, completely free, with no limits on game time. And this is available on most major platforms, which, for the sake of clarity, are PS4, PS5, Windows, Steam, Mac, and now Xbox Series X and S. So, if you were an avid Final Fantasy XIV player before, why not jump back in with Dawntrail to experience the new story arc? And if you're new, try Final Fantasy XIV for free up to level 70 with no restrictions on game time. To start your free trial today, use the link in the description below or in the pinned comment. But with that, let's get on with the video as we run through 7 overpowered items that broke Final Fantasy games, including a surprise entry from Final Fantasy XIV itself. Ninjas are often some of the strongest jobs available in any Final Fantasy game they happen to be in. This is for numerous reasons, but one of the biggest is that they have access to the throw command, and by extension, the items associated with that command. What's curious, however, is that in the original Famicom version of Final Fantasy III, where the ninja debuted, the throw command wasn't present. Instead, the ninja was given the ability to equip practically any weapon in the game, some of which were consumed upon using the attack command, and one of those items was the Shuriken. With a power rating of 200, almost double that of the next best throwing weapon, the Moonring Blade, the Shuriken could deal colossal damage to any enemy, and this regularly saw damage between 6 and 9,000, depending on the job level of the ninja in question. Shurikens weren't easy to come by though, at least until the very end of the game. They were scarcely placed in chests in the Crystal Tower and Eureka dungeons. However, once the player had finished the Gauntlet of Eureka and acquired the Sage and Ninja jobs for doing so, a secret shop located through the walls of the final room could sell as many Shurikens as needed, provided the player had enough gil to cover the hefty cost of them. Having access to multiple Shurikens then trivialized the rest of the game, with bosses within the World of Darkness and even the Cloud of Darkness herself falling prey to the onslaught of ninja stars thrown at them. Shurikens have appeared in many future Final Fantasy games as a hallmark of the ninja job too, particularly being a signature weapon of Edge in Final Fantasy IV, but they were never quite as powerful and game-breaking as they had been in Final Fantasy III. In a lot of cases, items in Final Fantasy are consumed and perform an immediate action, not having any kind of lasting effects after use. But that was not the case with the Golden Apple first found in Final Fantasy IV. The golden apple was crucial for long-term success, as when consumed, it increased the maximum HP of the recipient by 100 permanently. This therefore helped with survivability for any character receiving it. Such a bonus was extremely handy for surviving the likes of Zeromus's Big Bang attack, which it used repeatedly and quickly, or for exploring the bonus dungeons added in the Game Boy Advance and PSP versions of the game. What made the golden apple particularly powerful, however, was the fact that it was dropped by various enemies, such as the Thunder Dragon, Golden Toad, and the elusive Mech Dragon. This meant that, with enough time and patience, players could farm golden apples and maximize the HP of all of their party members, rendering much of the challenge of the game redundant. Maximum MP could also be maxed out through the use of the Soma drop, which increased max MP by 10 upon use. These could be acquired by fighting dark sages located in the Cave of Bahamut or the Lunar Subterrane. But having a maximum MP of 999 wasn't nearly as impactful as having a party with maximum HP across the board. In the 3D version of Final Fantasy IV, golden apples were significantly harder to come by, likely due to how broken they were in the 2D versions of the game. They were only dropped by the Mech Dragon, which had its name changed to the Clockwork Dragon in The Giant of Babel. This was now made a particularly rare spawn, while the drop rate of the golden apple was only 0.4% upon defeat. Silver apples, a weaker version that increased HP by 50, however, were much easier to come by. They could be farmed through the Lilith enemy on Mount Ordeals, meaning players could still get those lofty HP totals, it just might take a bit more patience. Elixirs are not unique to any Final Fantasy game, being an ultimate restorative of sorts that restored all HP and MP to anyone using it. But despite being present in the vast majority of games, that doesn't mean they are easy to come by, and elixirs are often rare in every game they feature in. This means they are often tied to being drops from particularly nasty monsters and bosses, or being isolated to specific chests. It's for this reason that elixirs are sought after, although due to their power, it can lead to players often being too scared to use them in the case they might need them later, coining the term elixir hoarding syndrome. Despite their power, elixirs also had an upgraded version, sometimes known as the Mega Elixir, which bestowed the effects of the elixir to the entire party, which made them even more sought after. But there is one variant of elixir that stands out even more than Mega Elixirs, and for that, we need to dive into Dirge of Cerberus. Dirge of Cerberus had some unique restoratives present, such as the Red Potion and Red Ether, which restored a random amount of HP and MP, and Phoenix Downs, which provided an auto-life effect, resurrecting Vincent upon being knocked out. There were also two items that couldn't be bought, and instead had to be found in the final levels of the game. The potion, which was a joke item of sorts, restored a single HP point to Vincent, being almost entirely useless. The elixir, however, found behind a laser barricade in Chapter 11, combined the effects of the elixir with those of a Phoenix Down, restoring all MP and HP upon being downed. Only one elixir could be found throughout the entirety of Dirge of Cerberus, and it was extremely useful for trying to play the game on its punishing extra hard difficulty. Now, unfettered invincibility is not commonly found at any point in the Final Fantasy franchise, given that it could decimate any challenge the game had to offer, but it has made rare appearances, usually in extremely specific encounters. In Final Fantasy VII, Aerith's Planet Protector and Great Gospel limit breaks granted the Peerless status, which rendered all physical and magical attacks useless against the party for a short period of time, though for various reasons, this was not available as the game entered its latter stages. In Crisis Core, it could also be achieved through the DMW system, but due to the nature of that system, it was completely random, which meant the player just had to appreciate the invincibility when it happened. In Final Fantasy VIII, however, it was possible to grant party members, and even the entire party, complete invincibility through the use of either Rinoa's Invincible Moon Limit Break, which was again unsustainable, or through the use of specific items. Hero and Hero Trials gave a single character complete immunity to all attacks and various status effects for 24 seconds, while the Holy War and Holy War Trials did the same thing for all 3 party members. These items were exceptionally rare and required either extensive use of forbidden medicine refinement obtained through Doom Train, stealing a very small number of them from specific late-game bosses like Cypher, or converting the Gilgamesh and Laguna cards through card mod. Holy Wars, though, were particularly broken, and having 10 of them from dismantling Gilgamesh's card made any encounter in the game, even the fearsome Omega weapon, a complete pushover. While invincibility has been a very rare status effect, as mentioned, Final Fantasy VIII was not the only game to feature it. And while it was most commonly granted through the use of special abilities, some games also had items that granted the status. Final Fantasy X-2, for example, had Hero and Miracle drinks, which functioned very similarly to Hero and Holy Wars in Final Fantasy VIII, but they could only be accessed through the Mix command. Final Fantasy Type 0, on the other hand, had a particularly potent version of the item named the Draco Medica. This item could be found on the floor in very specific missions such as Operation Voltinus, or through optional objectives known as Special Orders during the Battle for Judica. This made Draco Medica exceptionally rare, and should they be acquired, then there was a need to use them sparingly, as they combined the effects of a hero drink with those of an elixir, restoring all HP and MP and granting invincibility to the user. Lesser versions of the Draco Medica, like the Aurum Medica and Argentum Medica, were also very rare, but these items only provided regen or cleanse status effects. They did not provide invincibility. As the status not only prevented all damage from attack, but also prevented any recoil. Ranged attackers like Ace and Trey could therefore sweep through entire battlefields in record time by not having to worry at all about what the enemy was doing, no matter who they were or how many of them were present. Many of the items on this list are presented because of their effects on the player, but this next item is more known for how it managed to skew the entire economy of the game it came from, thus breaking the game economically, so to speak. Yes, we're talking about the unassuming coffee biscuit, which appeared in Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. Consisting of upland wheat flour, coffee beans, and garden beet sugar, coffee biscuits were a crafted food item made by culinarians across Eorzea. They bestowed a small XP bonus, like any food, as well as a small buff to gatherer jobs, but that wasn't the reason they garnered so much attention. The real purpose of the coffee biscuit was in leave quests, small quests which were repeatable to gain experience, gil, and items. One leave quest in particular, a cookie for your troubles, found in the Crystarium, simply asked for 3 high-quality coffee biscuits, though you could turn in up to 9 for additional rewards. Doing so granted a seemingly meagre reward of around 6,000 gil. The key here, though, was that it cost next to no time to farm the ingredients for the biscuits when using a botanist job, and the payout from the leave quest far exceeded the cost of the materials to complete it. This meant it was easy to turn over very large sums of gil in a short space of time, almost 2 million gil when using the full allowance of 100 leave quests, by crafting large sums of coffee biscuits and repeating the leave quest over and over. And because the gil came from an NPC rather than the game's self-sustaining economy, players were earning gil hand over fist. The coffee biscuit money-making scheme became so well known and widely used that it had to be nerfed on the release of Endwalker, so as not to ruin the entire economy of the game. And this was even referenced by an NPC who referred to the scandal by addressing the prohibition of consumption of the deleterious coffee beans. That then brings us on to the last entry of this list, which relates to Final Fantasy X and its Mix command. After appearing in Final Fantasy V as the primary skill of the chemist job, the Mix command did not return until Final Fantasy X. Here, it was Riku's overdrive ability, and it made a case for being arguably the strongest ability in the entire game. Riku's Mix granted all sorts of crazy effects, from final elixirs, fully healing and reviving the entire party, to support effects like miracle drinks, increasing the party's critical hit rate, and even hugely damaging attacks like Sunburst and the Chaos Grenade. But the Mix command was rendered moot without items to fuel it, and that's where the Gambler's Spirit comes in. Ordinarily, the Gambler's Spirit was a nice item to have, as using 20 of them granted any weapon the SOS overdrive ability. But they were also quite hard to acquire, only obtained by stealing from some of the hardest bosses in the game, granted from unlocking the Thuban boss, or by bribing the floating death enemy. And this was because the true power of the Gambler's Spirit only came forth when it was used by Riku. Mixing two of these items together granted the Trio of 9999 effect to the entire party, which made any instance of damage jump to the maximum 9999 soft cap. While Final Fantasy X was the first game in the series to allow this damage limit to be broken, using Trio of 9999 made it so that multi-hitting attacks such as Wakka's attack reels or Tidus's Slice and Dice and Blitz Ace overdrives dealt colossal damage with extremely little effort, and absolutely no grinding required beyond obtaining the Gambler's Spirits themselves. Another use of the Gambler's Spirit was to mix with a light curtain to make the Hyper Mighty G. This granted Shell, Protect, Haste, Regen, and Auto Life to the entire party, making it by far one of the strongest instances of positive status effects in a single move the entire series has ever seen. The mixed command has historically been so strong in any entry it's been in that it's very rarely seen at all, and yet it provides so much versatility and power that it's irresistible to play with, making it very exciting to see if this legendary command will ever return in the future. But with that, they were 7 overpowered items that broke Final Fantasy games. How many of these have you exploited to break the games yourselves? Be sure to let us know in the comments, as well as any other items you feel deserve a place on this list. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Alright everyone, with that, this is Daryl signing out. As always, I'd like to give a big thank you to all of our Patreon and YouTube membership supporters, especially Benjamin Snow, CloudClone28, The Livestream, Gregory, One Haromio, Justin Dent, and Zukin TDK, who are super special Onion Knight supporters. And of course, a big thank you to everyone for watching this video. I'll see you all again soon for more Final Fantasy goodness.